The landslide swallowed the black SUV whole, drowning it in tons of mud and rock as rain hammered the mountain highway. Jack Callahan gripped his steering wheel, watching nature claim another victim, until a woman's scream pierced through the storm. What he didn't know as he rushed toward that wall of earth was that the stranger trapped inside had spent 8 years searching for him, carrying a secret that would shatter everything he'd built to protect his broken heart. Hey everyone, follow my story to the end and comment your city below. Let me see how far this tale has traveled. The storm hit Highway 89 with the fury of something personal, as if the mountain itself had decided to wage war against anyone foolish enough to travel its curves that October night. Jack Callahan hunched forward in his pickup truck, squinting through windshield wipers that couldn't keep pace with the deluge. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel, every muscle in his 6'2" frame tensed against the vehicle's occasional slide toward the guardrail. "Should have stayed in town," he muttered to himself, though he knew that was never really an option. Lily was waiting at home, probably curled up on the couch with her sketchbook, drawing by candlelight if the power had gone out again. His 12-year-old daughter had inherited her mother's artistic eye, but Jack's stubborn independence. She'd insisted she'd be fine alone for the few hours it took him to drive to Missoula for supplies, and at 12 she mostly was. Still, storms like this made him nervous, made him remember other storms, other nights when he'd arrived too late. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the mountainside for a brilliant second. In that flash, Jack saw it. A wall of mud and rock sliding down the slope like a living thing, trees snapping like matchsticks in its path. His foot hit the brake instinctively, the truck fishtailing slightly on the wet asphalt. 50 yards ahead, a black SUV was trying to navigate around a fallen branch. "Move!" Jack heard himself say aloud, as if the driver could hear him. "Move! Move! Move!" But the landslide was faster. It swept across the road with a sound like thunder that wouldn't end, engulfing the SUV completely. One moment, the vehicle's taillights were visible through the rain. The next, there was only a mountain of debris where the road used to be. Jack sat frozen for 3 heartbeats. His hazard lights clicked on automatically, some part of his brain still functioning on autopilot. He could turn around, should turn around. The road was impassable now anyway, and emergency services would never make it up here in this weather. Lily was waiting. He had every reason to reverse down the mountain and find another route home. Then he heard it, faint but unmistakable through the rain's percussion. A scream. Human. Desperate. Alive. "Damn it!" Jack growled, already reaching for the flashlight in his glove compartment. His hands moved to the emergency kit under his seat. Rope, flares, first aid supplies, a crowbar, tools of preparedness he'd carried for 8 years but never needed. Until now. He stepped out into the storm, and the rain hit him like a physical assault. Within seconds, he was soaked through his flannel jacket, water streaming down his face, blurring his vision. The flashlight beam barely penetrated the darkness, catching only the silver lines of rain and the massive wall of mud ahead. "Hello!" he shouted, moving toward the landslide. "Can you hear me?" Another scream, muffled but definitely coming from somewhere within the debris. Jack's boots slipped on the wet rocks as he climbed onto the slide. The earth was still moving, still settling, smaller rocks tumbling down around him. Any emergency response training would tell him this was suicide. Never approach an active slide zone. But training and reality were different things, and someone was dying in there. His flashlight caught a glint of metal, part of the SUV's roof, crushed but partially visible through a gap in the debris. Jack dropped to his knees, began pulling rocks away with his bare hands. The latex gloves from his emergency kit tore within minutes, leaving his hands raw and bleeding, but he didn't stop. "I'm here," he called out. "I'm going to get you out." A woman's voice, weak but close. "Please, can't breathe." The crowbar became his lifeline, leveraging larger rocks away from what he could now see was the driver's side window, spiderwebbed but intact. Through it, he could make out a figure, a woman, probably mid-30s, blood running down the side of her face, her eyes wide with terror and pain. "The door's crushed," she gasped. "I can't—" "Save your air," Jack commanded, already swinging the crowbar at the window. It took 3 hits before the safety glass crumbled into 1,000 tiny pieces. He reached in, carefully brushing the glass aside, his hands finding her seatbelt. The mechanism was jammed. "Knife," he muttered, pulling his pocket knife out. "Don't move." She held impossibly still as he cut through the belt, even as more debris shifted above them. Jack could hear it, the ominous creaking of weight redistributing. They had maybe minutes before the whole thing came down. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep her calm as he worked to clear enough space to pull her through. "Claire," she whispered. "Claire Hartley." "Okay, Claire. I'm Jack. When I say 3, I need you to push with everything you've got while I pull. Can you do that?" She nodded, though he could see the pain flickering across her features. Something was wrong with her left arm. The angle wasn't right. Broken, probably. Maybe worse. 1. He gripped under her shoulders, trying to avoid the injured arm. 2. A rock the size of a basketball tumbled down, missing his head by inches. 3. She screamed as he pulled, the sound cutting through the storm like a blade. But she moved, inch by agonizing inch, through the window. Jack felt the moment her weight cleared the vehicle, and he hauled her backward just as another section of the slide collapsed, burying the SUV completely. They tumbled down the debris pile together, Jack trying to shield her body with his as they rolled. When they hit the solid asphalt of the intact road, he was on top of her, his body a protective cage as rocks continued to rain down around them. "Can you walk?" he asked, already knowing the answer from the way she was breathing, short, pained gasps. I don't think—" He didn't wait for her to finish. In one motion, he scooped her into his arms, her body surprisingly light despite being dead weight. His truck was only 20 yards away, but it felt like miles. The rain made everything slippery, treacherous. Twice he nearly fell, each time feeling her grip tighten on his shirt. He managed to get the passenger door open, settling her as gently as possible on the seat. In the dome light, he could better see her injuries. The gash on her forehead was deep but not life-threatening. Her left arm was definitely broken, and there were probably ribs involved too from the way she was breathing. But she was alive, conscious. That was what mattered. "Hospital," she whispered. "Too far in this weather," Jack said, making a decision that would change everything. "The road's blocked both directions now, but I live about 10 minutes from here. I've got medical supplies, and my daughter, she knows first aid. We can at least stabilize you until the storm passes." Claire's eyes found his in the dim light, and something flickered across her expression, something beyond pain or gratitude. Recognition? No, that was impossible. They'd never met. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely audible over the rain drumming on the roof. Jack threw the truck in reverse, carefully backing down until he found a spot wide enough to turn around. The drive to his cabin had never felt longer. Every bump in the road drew a suppressed whimper from Claire, though she was clearly trying to stay quiet. He found himself talking, filling the silence with meaningless chatter about the storm, about the roads, about anything except the way she kept staring at his hands on the steering wheel. "You're bleeding," she said suddenly. He glanced down. His hands were indeed bleeding, knuckles raw from pulling rocks, a deeper gash across his left palm. "It's nothing." "No," she said, and there was something strange in her voice. "Your arm, the scar." Jack's jaw tightened, the old scar on his forearm, jagged, distinctive, impossible to miss when his sleeves were rolled up like now. A souvenir from another life, another rescue, another storm. "It's old," he said shortly. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then, 8 years? The truck swerved slightly. Jack corrected, his heart suddenly pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with the dangerous roads. "What? Is it 8 years old?" she pressed, her voice stronger now despite the pain. "Look, you've lost some blood. You're in shock. Just rest." "The Riverside Bridge collapse," she interrupted. "April 15th, 8 years ago. The school bus in the river." Jack's hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles went white beneath the blood. "You need to stop talking. Save your strength." But Claire wasn't listening. Her good hand reached out, not quite touching his arm but hovering near the scar. 22 children on that bus. 21 made it out. You're the reason why. "Stop." The word came out harsher than he intended. "My daughter was wearing a purple jacket that day," Claire continued, tears now mixing with the blood on her face. She was 4 years old. Her name was Emily. The news said the man who saved her disappeared before anyone could thank him. But I've been looking. I said, "Stop!" Jack slammed on the brakes, the truck sliding to a halt in the middle of the empty road. His chest was heaving, 8 years of carefully constructed walls threatening to crumble. You don't know what you're talking about. Claire's eyes never left his face. You have sawdust in your hair. You smell like pine and motor oil. Your hands, they're a craftsman's hands. The news said the hero was a carpenter who happened to be driving by. They said he had a scar on his left forearm from where he cut himself breaking the bus window. Jack's voice was deadly quiet. A lot of people have scars. You knew exactly where to hit my window to break it. You knew how to leverage your body weight pulling me out. You've done this before. I need to get you medical attention. He put the truck back in drive, but his hands were shaking now. Why did you disappear? Claire asked softly. The parents. We all wanted to thank you. The mayor wanted to give you a medal. Why did you run? Jack's laugh was bitter, hollow. Because heroes don't let their pregnant wives die in a car accident while they're off saving other people's children. The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Jack immediately wished he could take them back, stuff them back down into the dark place where he'd kept them buried for 8 years. But they were out now, raw and bleeding like his hands. Claire was silent for a long moment. Then, very quietly, I'm sorry. Don't. Jack's voice was rough. Just don't. They drove the rest of the way in silence, the only sounds the rain and the windshield wipers, and Claire's labored breathing. When Jack's cabin finally came into view, a modest 2-story log structure nestled among the pines, he saw Lily's face appear in the window, backlit by candlelight. His daughter. His reason for everything. The one good thing that had come from the worst day of his life. That's your daughter? Claire asked. Yeah. She's about Emily's age. Jack didn't respond. He was already calculating what he would need. The first aid kit was comprehensive, but the broken arm would need a proper splint. They had enough supplies to last through the storm. Lily would help. She was good in a crisis, had inherited that from her mother too. As he carried Claire to the front door, Lily was already there, holding it open. No questions about why her father was carrying a bloody stranger, just immediate assessment and action. Kitchen table, Lily said, already clearing the surface. I'll get the medical kit and boil water. Power's been out for an hour, but the generator's running. Jack set Claire down as gently as possible on a kitchen chair. In the better light of the cabin, she looked worse, pale beneath the blood, shaking from shock and cold. But her eyes were still sharp, still studying him with an intensity that made him deeply uncomfortable. This is Lily, he said, because normal introduction seemed absurd but necessary. Lily, this is Claire. She was caught in a landslide on 89. Lily nodded, already returning with towels and the medical kit. The radio said the road's completely blocked. Emergency services can't get through until morning at least. We'll manage, Jack said, beginning to clean the wound on Claire's forehead. His hands were steady now, compartmentalizing like he'd learned to do. This needs stitches. I can do it, but it's going to hurt. I trust you, Claire said, and somehow those 3 words carried more weight than they should. As Jack worked, cleaning, stitching, splinting, Lily assisted with the quiet efficiency of someone older than her 12 years. She didn't ask questions, just anticipated needs, holding things steady when Claire flinched, offering water when her lips went dry, being exactly what they needed her to be. You're very brave, Claire told her at one point when Jack was setting her arm. Lily shrugged. Dad taught me. He says being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs to be done anyway. Claire's eyes flicked to Jack. Smart man. It took 2 hours to properly treat all of Claire's injuries. By the time they were done, she was bandaged, splinted, and dressed in some of Jack's ex-wife's old clothes that he'd never been able to throw away. Lily had made soup, nothing fancy, just chicken noodle from a can, but warm and necessary. They ate in relative quiet, the storm still raging outside. Claire kept starting to say something, then stopping. Jack pretended not to notice. Lily sketched in her notebook, occasionally glancing up at their guest with the artist's habit of memorizing interesting faces. You can have the guest room, Jack finally said. It's upstairs, but I can manage stairs. Claire said. Thank you. For everything. I know you didn't have to. Hey, anyone would have done the same. No. Her voice was firm. They wouldn't have. Most people would have waited for help. Called 911. Stayed safe. She paused. But you're not most people, are you? You're the kind of person who jumps into rivers for strangers' children. Jack stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Lily will show you to your room. You need rest. He walked out before Claire could respond, stepping onto the covered porch despite the cold and rain. His hands gripped the railing, knuckles white again, the wounds from earlier splitting open. 8 years. 8 years of running from that day, of building a new life in these mountains where no one knew his name or his story. 8 years of telling himself that saving those children didn't make up for failing to save his wife, that being called a hero was a cruel joke when he couldn't protect the person who mattered most. Behind him, he heard the door open, Lily's soft footsteps. Dad? Yeah, kiddo? She's not wrong, you know, about you being brave. Jack's laugh was humorless. Your mom was brave. I'm just... Human? Lily supplied, moving to stand beside him. Mom would have been proud of what you did tonight. How can you know that? Lily was quiet for a moment, then, because I am. She went back inside before Jack could respond, leaving him alone with the storm and his thoughts. Through the window, he could see Claire attempting to climb the stairs, Lily hovering nearby in case she needed help. The woman who'd spent 8 years looking for him. The mother of one of the 21 children he'd saved on the worst day of his life. He thought about that day, as he rarely allowed himself to do. The bridge collapsing just as the school bus was crossing, the yellow vehicle tipping, sliding, disappearing into the swollen river. He'd been driving to the hospital. Sarah was having contractions, wanted him to pick her up from her sister's house, but he couldn't drive past. Couldn't watch those children disappear beneath the muddy water and do nothing. By the time he'd pulled the last child out, a little girl in a purple jacket who'd been trapped under a seat, sirens were everywhere. Parents were arriving, screaming, crying. Someone was trying to put a blanket around his shoulders, a news camera in his face. But his phone was ringing, had been ringing. Sarah's sister, hysterical. There had been an accident. Sarah had tried to drive herself when Jack didn't show up. The rain, the roads, a truck that didn't stop in time. She was gone before he even made it to the hospital. Their unborn daughter with her. So he'd run. Left town that very night, Lily, then only 4 herself, confused and crying in the back seat, found this place in Montana, where no one asked questions and everyone respected a man's desire to be left alone. Built a life that was quiet, safe, controlled. No more heroics. No more choosing strangers over family. Until tonight. Jack looked up at the guest room window, saw Claire's silhouette moving slowly inside. She'd found him. After 8 years, she'd found him by pure chance, by the cruel poetry of another storm, another rescue. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. When he finally went back inside, Lily was cleaning up the medical supplies. She looked up at him with those eyes that were so much like her mother's, deep brown, too wise, too understanding. She wants to call her daughter tomorrow, Lily said, to let her know she's safe. That's fine. Dad? Lily hesitated. Is she right? About the bus? About you? Jack sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. It doesn't matter. It does to her. Lily, I know about Mom, Lily said quietly. I know what day she died. I did the math. It was the same day as the bridge collapse, wasn't it? Jack's throat was too tight to speak. He just nodded. Lily moved to hug him, her thin arms surprisingly strong. You saved 21 kids, Dad. 21 families got to stay whole. That matters. Our family didn't stay whole. No, Lily agreed, but we survived. And we're still here. That matters too. She kissed his forehead and headed upstairs, leaving Jack alone in the kitchen. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to ease, the rain softening from assault to simple percussion. Somewhere above him, Claire Hartley was probably lying awake, processing the reality that she'd found the man she'd been searching for. Tomorrow, she would call her daughter, Emily, the girl in the purple jacket. There would be questions, probably tears, definitely complications Jack didn't want to deal with. But tonight, None of that mattered. Tonight, he'd pulled another stranger from another disaster. And this time, everyone had survived, even him. Jack turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to his room, his body aching in ways that had nothing to do with physical exertion. As he passed the guest room, he heard Claire's voice, soft and pained. "Thank you." He didn't know if she was talking to him, or to God, or to the universe that had brought them together in such a violent, unexpected way. He didn't respond, just continued to his room, where he lay awake for hours listening to the rain and remembering the weight of 21 small bodies in his arms, the weight of his wife's absence, the weight of choices that could never be unmade. In the morning, everything would change. Claire would want answers, would want to thank him properly, would want to tell him about Emily, about how his actions had given her daughter 8 more years of life. She would want to absolve him, probably, to tell him it wasn't his fault, that he'd made the only choice he could. But Jack knew better. Heroes in stories got to save everyone. Heroes in real life had to choose. And sometimes, no matter which choice you made, you lost something irreplaceable. The rain continued through the night, softer now, almost gentle. Jack finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of rushing water and school buses and purple jackets and Sarah's voice calling his name through a storm he could never quite reach in time. When dawn broke gray and subdued over the mountains, Jack woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Lily and Claire, talking quietly. He couldn't make out the words, but he could hear the tone. Warm, comfortable, as if they'd known each other longer than just one night. He dressed slowly, delaying the inevitable. When he finally made it downstairs, he found them at the kitchen table, Lily showing Claire her sketchbook. Claire's face was less pale than last night, though the bruising had developed into spectacular purples and blues. She looked up when Jack entered, and that intensity was back in her gaze. "Lily's been showing me her artwork," she said. "She's incredibly talented." "Gets it from her mother," Jack said automatically, pouring himself coffee from the pot Lily had already made. "I was telling Claire about the art program in Missoula," Lily said. "The one I'm applying to for next summer." Jack nodded, not trusting himself to speak. This was too normal, too domestic, too much like what life might have been if different choices had been made 8 years ago. "I should call Emily," Claire said. "If that's okay. Let her know I'm all right." "Phone's in the living room," Jack said. "Cell service is sketchy up here, but the landline works." Claire stood carefully, wincing slightly. Lily immediately moved to help her, and together they made their way to the living room. Jack stayed in the kitchen, gripping his coffee mug, trying not to listen to Claire's half of the conversation. Honey, it's Mom. I'm okay. No, I'm fine, really. There was a landslide, but someone helped me. I'm at their house now. In Montana still, yes. Emily, listen, I need to tell you something." Jack walked out to the porch, unable to hear anymore. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming. The mountain road would still be blocked, but emergency crews would be working to clear it. Soon, Claire would be able to leave, would go back to her life, her daughter, her world. This strange interlude would end, and Jack could return to his carefully constructed isolation. Behind him, the door opened. Claire stepped out, moving carefully but steadier than before. "She wants to meet you," Claire said without preamble. "No." "Jack, I said no. You found me. You know what happened. That's enough." Claire was quiet for a moment, studying him. "She's 12 now, same as Lily. She's brilliant, wants to be a doctor. Says she wants to save people like someone saved her. Good for her. She has nightmares sometimes, about the water, about being trapped, but then she remembers the man who pulled her out, who held her and told her she was brave, that everything would be okay. That memory of you, it's what gets her through." Jack's jaw clenched. "Don't do this. She deserves to thank you. And I deserve to be left alone." Claire moved closer, and Jack could smell her shampoo. Lily must have lent her some. Something floral and young and hopeful. "What about what you deserve?" Claire asked softly. "Forgiveness? Peace? The knowledge that Sarah's death meant something, that those children you saved grew up to be amazing people? Don't." The word was barely more than a growl. "Don't you dare use my wife's name." "Lily told me," Claire admitted. "This morning, not details, just Enough. I'm sorry. I can't imagine. No, you can't. Jack turned to face her fully. You can't imagine choosing between saving strangers' children and being there for your own family. You can't imagine holding 21 kids while your wife died alone. You can't imagine living with that choice every single day for 8 years. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't back down. You're right, I can't. But I can imagine being one of those 21 mothers who didn't have to bury their child. I can imagine the 1,000 moments I got to have with Emily because of you. First days of school, birthday parties, bedtime stories, dance recitals, all of it, every single second, because you made an impossible choice on an impossible day. It wasn't worth it. To you, maybe not. But to us? To 21 families, Claire's voice broke. You gave us everything, Jack. Everything. They stood there in silence, the weight of 8 years pressing down between them. Finally, Claire reached into her pocket, pulling out a business card. I'm not going to push, she said, but if you ever change your mind, if you ever want to meet her properly, call me. We live in San Francisco, but we could come here, or you could come there, whatever you're comfortable with. Jack took the card without looking at it. The road should be clear by afternoon. I'll drive you back to your car, or what's left of it. Thank you, Claire said, for everything. Even if you can't accept it, even if you don't want to hear it, thank you. She went back inside, leaving Jack alone with the business card. Claire Hartley, CEO, Hartley Innovation Group, a tech company from the look of it. Successful. The kind of life that Purple Jacket Emily got to have a mother for. He shoved the card in his pocket and went to find his keys. The sooner he got Claire back to her life, the sooner he could pretend this never happened. The sooner he could go back to his quiet existence of sawdust and silence and carefully controlled pain. But as he watched Claire say goodbye to Lily, watched them exchange phone numbers despite his disapproval, watched his daughter's face light up at the promise of staying in touch, Jack knew it was already too late. The past had found him, dragged up from the mud like Claire from her buried SUV. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running from it. The drive back to the Landslide site that afternoon was silent except for Claire's occasional sharp intake of breath when they hit a bump. Jack had waited until the county emergency radio confirmed the road was partially cleared, one lane open for local traffic only. Claire sat rigid in the passenger seat, her splinted arm cradled against her chest, staring at the mountain slopes as if they might attack again. There, she said quietly as they rounded the bend. Her buried SUV was now fully exposed, crushed like a stepped-on soda can, windows blown out, roof caved in. A small crowd of emergency workers was documenting the scene. My God, I should be dead. Jack said nothing, parking well clear of the work zone. A sheriff's deputy approached, took their statements, arranged for Claire's belongings to be retrieved once the vehicle was extracted. Her suitcase, miraculously, had survived in the trunk, though her laptop and phone were destroyed. I'll rent a car in Missoula, Claire said as they drove away from the wreckage. You don't need to... I'll take you, Jack cut her off. It's an hour drive. You can't manage it with that arm. She looked like she wanted to argue, but thought better of it. They stopped at his cabin briefly for her suitcase and for Lily to say goodbye. His daughter hugged Claire carefully, mindful of her injuries. Text me when you get home safe, Lily said, then glanced at her father. If that's okay. Jack didn't answer, just walked back to the truck. He heard Claire promise Lily she would, heard them exchange a few more words he couldn't make out. When Claire climbed back into the passenger seat, she was crying silently. She's remarkable, Claire said after a few miles. You've done an incredible job raising her alone. She raises herself mostly. That's not true and you know it. Claire shifted, wincing. She told me about the furniture you make, how you taught her to see the beauty in the wood grain, to understand that every tree has a story. That's not a girl who raises herself. That's a girl who's been lovingly taught to see the world through an artist's eyes. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't want to have this conversation, didn't want Claire Hartley's insights into his parenting or his life. But she continued, undeterred by his silence. Emily's like that too, sees things others miss. After the accident, the bridge, she was different, quieter, more observant. The therapist said trauma can do that, make children hypervigilant. But I think it was more than that. I think nearly dying at 4 years old gave her an appreciation for life that most people never develop. The rental car office in Missoula was closed by the time they arrived. It was Sunday, and the storm had disrupted everything. The nearest open location was in Kalispell, another 2 hours north. Jack sat in the parking lot, engine idling, weighing his options. "There's a hotel across the street," he said finally. "You can stay tonight. Get the car tomorrow." "I have a flight at 6 a.m. from Kalispell," Claire said. "Board meeting Tuesday. I can't miss." Of course she did. Of course the universe wouldn't make this easy. Wouldn't let him simply deposit her at a hotel and drive away. Jack put the truck in gear without a word, heading north toward Kalispell. Claire made a soft sound that might have been relief or resignation. They drove through the growing dusk, the mountains throwing long shadows across the highway. Claire dozed fitfully, pain medication making her drowsy. Jack found himself glancing at her more than he should, noting the way the setting sun caught the auburn highlights in her dark hair, the delicate curve of her jaw, the way her uninjured hand rested on her thigh with fingers that looked like they'd never done manual labor. She woke as they entered Kalispell, disoriented for a moment. "How long was I?" "Hour and a half." "You should have woken me. You must be exhausted." Jack shrugged. The rental office was still open, harsh fluorescent light spilling onto the darkening parking lot. He waited while Claire handled the paperwork, watched her struggle to sign with her non-dominant hand. The clerk kept shooting curious glances at her bruised face, the splinted arm, clearly dying to ask what happened. "All set," Claire said, returning with keys to a sedan. "Thank you for the ride, for everything." Jack nodded, already turning to leave, but her good hand caught his sleeve. "Wait, please." She pulled out her phone. A new one, apparently purchased at the airport. "Let me at least pay you for gas, or buy you dinner, something." "I don't want your money." "Then dinner, just dinner, please. She paused, seeming to gather herself. "I've been looking for you for 8 years, Jack. I've hired private investigators. I've combed through news footage, frame by frame, trying to see your face clearly. I've wondered 1,000 times what I would say if I ever found you, and now you're here and you're leaving, and I'm going back to San Francisco tomorrow, and I'll probably never see you again. Can't you give me 1 hour? Just one?" Jack wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at him to get in his truck and drive away. But something in her voice, a raw desperation that had nothing to do with her injuries, made him hesitate. 1 hour, he said roughly. That's it. She directed him to a small Italian restaurant she'd apparently found on her phone. It was the kind of place that tried too hard. Checkered tablecloths, plastic grapes hanging from fake vines, Dean Martin crooning from hidden speakers. But it was quiet. Only a few other diners, and dark enough that Claire's bruises weren't immediately obvious. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, Claire struggling to look at the menu with one hand. Jack ordered for both of them without asking. She didn't object. When the wine came, she raised her glass awkwardly. To chance encounters. Jack didn't toast, just sipped his water. Claire set down her wine untouched. "You're not going to make this easy, are you?" "I don't know what you want from me." "I told you, I want to thank you." "You have. Multiple times. We're done." Claire was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her phone. "Can I show you something?" Before Jack could object, she'd turned the screen toward him. It was a photo of a girl, 12 years old, long dark hair like her mother's, but with striking green eyes that must have come from her father. She was laughing, caught mid-motion on what looked like a soccer field, muddy and triumphant. "That was last week," Claire said. "Her team won the championship. She scored the winning goal." She swiped to another photo. The same girl at a piano recital, fingers poised over keys, face intense with concentration. Another swipe. Emily and Claire together at what looked like a beach, both making silly faces at the camera. "Stop," Jack said, but his voice lacked conviction. Claire swiped again. This time it was a younger Emily, maybe 6 or 7, holding up a painting she'd made. A bridge over water, but with a rainbow where the bridge should have broken. Her therapist had her draw the accident, Claire explained. This is what she created. She said the rainbow was the man who saved her. Said he was all the colors at once, too bright to look at directly. Jack's throat was tight. "Claire, she wrote you letters." Claire pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse. Every year on the anniversary, April 15th. I told her we didn't know where to send them, but she wrote them anyway. This is from this year. She pushed the paper across the table. Jack didn't want to read it, but his hands moved without his permission, unfolding the careful creases. The handwriting was neat, careful, the letters of a 12-year-old who took pride in her penmanship. Dear Hero, Mom says I should call you something else, but I don't know your name, so Hero works. It's been 8 years since you pulled me from the bus. I don't remember everything. I was only 4. But I remember you. You had strong arms and a soft voice. You told me I was brave. You told me to keep my eyes on you and not look at the water. You sang to me, I think, though I can't remember the song. I'm 12 now. I play soccer and piano, and I want to be a doctor. My best friend is named Zoe, and we're going to the same middle school next year. I have a dog named Bandit who likes to steal socks. I can speak French and Spanish and a little Mandarin. I got straight A's this year except for 1 B+ in PE because I refused to climb the rope. I don't like heights since the bridge. But I know you probably don't think about me. You saved 21 kids that day. I looked it up. I'm just one of many. But I think about you every day. When I'm scared, I remember you telling me I was brave. When things are hard, I remember you didn't give up even when the bus was sinking. When I see someone in trouble, I think about how you didn't drive past. Mom cries on April 15th every year. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. She says they're grateful tears. I cry too sometimes, but mine are different. I cry because somewhere out there, you're walking around thinking you're not a hero. But you are. You're my hero. And someday, I hope I can tell you that in person. Thank you for my life. Emily. Jack carefully refolded the letter, his hands trembling slightly. When he looked up, Claire was watching him with those intense eyes. She doesn't know, Claire said quietly, about your wife, about the cost. I haven't told her. It didn't seem like my story to share. Good. Jack's voice was rough. Keep it that way. Their food arrived. Lasagna he didn't taste, salad he didn't want. They ate in relative silence, Claire occasionally wincing as she tried to manage her fork left-handed. Finally, she set down her utensils. Can I ask you something? Jack waited. If you could go back knowing what you know now, would you do it differently? Would you drive past? The question hung between them like a blade. Jack thought about lying, about saying yes. He would have chosen Sarah, chosen their unborn daughter, chosen his own family over strangers. It would be easier, cleaner, would end this conversation and let him walk away. But he thought about Emily's letter, about a 12-year-old girl who played soccer and spoke 3 languages and wanted to be a doctor, about 20 other kids who were now 20 years old, starting college or careers or families of their own. No, he admitted. I'd make the same choice, and I'd lose her again. And I'd hate myself for it again. He met Claire's eyes. That's what you don't understand. It wasn't a choice between right and wrong. It was a choice between 2 unbearable options. And I chose the one that saved the most lives, but it cost me the only life that mattered to me. Claire reached across the table with her good hand, not quite touching his. What if that's not true? What if Sarah would have died anyway? The accident report said the other driver was drunk, ran a red light going 60 miles an hour. Even if you'd been there, Jack pulled his hand back. Don't. I've read every report, Jack, every witness statement. The impact was instantaneous, even if you'd been in the car. I said don't. He stood abruptly, throwing cash on the table. We're done here. Claire struggled to stand, grabbing her purse. Jack, wait. But he was already walking out, his long strides forcing her to nearly run to keep up despite her injuries. In the parking lot, she caught his arm. I'm sorry, I'm pushing too hard. God, Jack, you saved my daughter. You gave me 8 years of mornings and bedtime stories and birthday candles and first days of school. How do I just say thank you and walk away? How do I not try to give you something back? You can't give me anything back, Jack said flatly. Sarah is dead, our daughter is dead. Your gratitude doesn't change that. What about Lily? Jack froze. What about her? She needs to know her father is a hero. She needs to understand that what you did. She knows what she needs to know. Does she? Or does she just know that her mother died on the same day 21 children lived? Does she know about the letters Emily writes? The other families who light candles for you every April 15th? The children who grew up to be teachers and engineers and nurses because you gave them the chance? Jack turned to face her fully, and Claire took an involuntary step back at the rage in his eyes. My daughter knows that I love her. She knows that I've been here every single day of her life, that I didn't run off to be some goddamn hero when she needed me. She knows that she's my priority, my only priority, and that I would let the whole world burn before I'd risk losing her too. That's what she knows. Claire's eyes filled with tears. But that's not who you are. You didn't let those children burn. You couldn't. And tonight, you couldn't let me die in that landslide, even though walking away would have been safer, easier. You're not someone who lets the world burn, Jack. You're someone who runs into the fire. And look where it got me. Yes, Claire said softly. Look where it got you. A beautiful daughter who adores you, a life you built with your own hands, the knowledge that 21 families are whole because of your courage. Maybe it's not the life you planned, but it's not nothing. Jack didn't have an answer for that. They stood in the parking lot, the Montana night crisp around them, distant mountains just shadows against stars. Finally, Claire walked to her rental car, fumbling with the keys using her left hand. Thank you for dinner, she said formally. And for the ride. And for my life. She got in the car before he could respond, starting the engine with obvious difficulty. Jack watched her try to shift into reverse one-handed, the car lurching and stalling. She tried again, the same result. Jesus Christ, he muttered, walking over and yanking open her door. Move over. I can manage. You can't drive a stick with one hand. Move over. Claire slid awkwardly across to the passenger seat. Jack adjusted the driver's seat for his longer legs, then looked at her. Where's your hotel? She named a place near the airport. Of course. Jack put the car in gear, driving through Kalispell's quiet streets. Claire was silent, cradling her injured arm, occasionally wiping at her eyes with her sleeve. The hotel was one of those anonymous chains that dotted every airport in America. Jack pulled up to the entrance, leaving the engine running. Your flight's at 6? Yes. You'll need to leave here by 4:30, 4 to be safe. I know. They sat for a moment, engine idling, neither moving. Can I ask one more thing? Claire said finally. And then I promise I'll never bother you again. Jack waited. Will you at least think about it, meeting Emily properly? Not for me, not even for her really, but for you, to see that something good came from that terrible day? Goodbye, Claire. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Goodbye, Jack. She got out of the car, struggling with her suitcase until a bellhop rushed to help. Jack waited until she was inside, then drove the rental car to the far end of the parking lot where his truck was parked. He'd followed her here, planning to leave the rental with the valet. But as he sat in his truck, keys in the ignition, he couldn't seem to make himself turn it on. Instead, he pulled out Emily's letter, reading it again in the dome light. Thank you for my life. 4 words that carried the weight of 8 years. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Did Miss Claire get to her hotel okay? Yes, he typed back. Are you okay, Dad? Jack stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed. On my way home. Drive safe. Love you. Love you too, kiddo. He put the phone away, but still didn't start the truck. Through the hotel's glass doors, he could see the lobby, bright and sterile. Somewhere in there, Claire was probably checking in, struggling with paperwork, maybe taking pain medication for her injuries. Tomorrow she'd fly back to San Francisco, back to her CEO life, and her daughter, who wrote letters to heroes. And he'd drive back to his cabin, back to his saws and sanders, and the careful life he'd built from the wreckage of April 15th. Jack sat in his truck until midnight, watching the hotel like he was standing guard, like he was making sure Claire was safe one last time. Finally, exhausted and cold, he started the engine and headed home. The 2-hour drive felt endless. His headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the winding mountain road, but his mind was 8 years in the past. He could still feel the current pulling at him as he'd fought to reach the bus, could still hear the children screaming, could still see that little girl in the purple jacket trapped under the seat, water rising around her. He'd grabbed her just as the bus shifted, the whole vehicle groaning as it was pulled deeper. She'd wrapped her arms around his neck with surprising strength for a 4-year-old, buried her face in his shoulder. He'd kicked out through the shattered back window, lungs burning, black spots dancing in his vision. When they'd broken the surface, she was so still he'd thought he'd been too late. But then she'd coughed, vomited river water, and started crying, the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. He'd held her on the riverbank while emergency responders dealt with the other children, held her until a woman, not Claire, must have been a relative, had pulled her away. That's when his phone had started ringing. Sarah's sister. The words that changed everything. Accident, hospital, hurry. But by then, the damage was done. By then, his choice had been made. Jack pulled into his driveway at 2 a.m. The cabin was dark except for the porch light Lily had left on. He sat in the truck for another moment looking at his home. It was a good life, the one he'd built here. Quiet, safe, controlled, lonely. The word came unbidden, unwelcome. He pushed it away, but it lingered like smoke. 8 years of pushing people away, of keeping everyone at arm's length except Lily. 8 years of punishing himself for a choice that had saved 21 lives. Inside, he checked on Lily, asleep, her sketchbook still open beside her, a half-finished drawing of what looked like Claire visible in the moonlight. His daughter, the artist. His daughter, the survivor. Jack went to his workshop instead of his bedroom. The space smelled of pine shavings and linseed oil, comfortable and familiar. He ran his hands over the table he'd been working on, feeling the grain, the smooth spots, and the rough. Every piece of wood had a story, he'd told Lily. Every tree had survived storms and droughts and seasons of growth. The scars and knots weren't flaws. They were evidence of resilience, of survival, of continuing to grow despite the damage. He thought about Claire's words. Maybe it's not the life you planned, but it's not nothing. On his workbench was the business card she'd given him. He'd meant to throw it away, but hadn't. Now he picked it up, turning it over in his fingers. Such a small thing, but it felt heavier than it should. Jack pulled out his phone, then set it down. Picked it up again. It was 2:30 in the morning. Claire would be asleep, probably heavily medicated for the pain. This was ridiculous, but he typed out a text anyway. This is Jack. Your flight is at 6. Don't forget to take your antibiotics. The infection risk with those wounds is significant. He stared at it for a full minute before hitting send. The response came immediately. Can't sleep, too much pain. Thank you for checking. He shouldn't respond, should just leave it at that. But his fingers were already typing. Alternate ice and heat on the ribs. 20 minutes each. It helps. Thank you. Jack? He waited. I meant what I said. Emily doesn't need to know about Sarah. That's your story to tell or not tell. Good. But if you ever want to tell it, if you ever want someone who understands impossible choices, you have my number. Jack set down the phone without responding. He picked up a piece of sandpaper, began working on the table even though it didn't need it. The repetitive motion was soothing, meditative, but his mind wouldn't quiet. 21 children. That's what he'd bought with Sarah's life, with their unborn daughter's life. 21 children who were now young adults, living lives that almost never were. Emily, who wanted to be a doctor, who spoke 3 languages, who scored winning goals and played piano and wrote letters to her hero. Was it enough? Could any number ever be enough? His phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Emily again, but younger, maybe 5 or 6. She was in a hospital bed, grinning despite the IVs in her arm. She was holding a handmade sign that said, "I lived," in crooked, colorful letters. She got pneumonia the year after the accident, Claire's text explained. Complications from the near drowning. Almost lost her again. But she fought. Said her hero showed her how to be brave. Jack set down the sandpaper, his hands shaking. Another photo arrived. Emily at 7, dressed as a superhero for Halloween. Then at 8, learning to swim. Claire's message explained she'd been terrified of water but insisted on learning because heroes face their fears. Stop, he typed. But more photos came. Emily at 9, 10, 11. School plays and science fairs and birthday parties. A whole life documented in snapshots. The life he'd made possible. The life Sarah and their daughter had lost. Finally, a video. Jack almost didn't open it, but his thumb moved without permission. It was recent. Emily looked exactly like the photos Claire had shown at dinner. She was sitting at a piano, playing something classical and complex. Her fingers moved with confident precision, her face serene with concentration. When the piece ended, she looked directly at the camera. "Mom says you might see this someday," Emily said to the camera. "So I wanted you to know this is Chopin's Ballade No. 1. It's one of the hardest pieces ever written for piano. It took me 2 years to learn. My teacher said I didn't have the reach, that my hands were too small. But I remembered what you told me when I was 4. You said I was brave. You said I could do anything if I just held on. So I held on, and I learned it. Because you taught me that impossible things are possible if you just don't give up." The video ended. Jack stood in his workshop, surrounded by wood and tools and the life he'd built from grief, and for the first time in 8 years, he cried. Not the angry tears of that first year, or the bitter tears of the second, but something else. Something that felt almost like release. His phone rang. Claire. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I shouldn't have sent all that. It's manipulative and wrong, and—" "She's beautiful," Jack said roughly. "She's a beautiful kid, Claire." Silence on the other end then. "She is. She's everything. She's my whole world. I know that feeling." "I know you do." Claire's voice was soft. "That's why I had to find you, Jack. Because you gave me my whole world. And I needed you to know that your sacrifice, God, I hate that word, but I don't know what else to call it, it mattered. It mattered so much." Jack sank onto his workshop stool. "I can't meet her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm not ready for that. I understand. But—" he paused, hardly believing what he was about to say. "But maybe you could send updates sometimes. Photos. Let me know she's okay." Of course I will." They were quiet for a moment, connected by satellites and cell towers and the strange bond of a shared trauma. "I should let you sleep," Claire said finally. "Early flight. Take care of yourself. Follow up with an orthopedist when you get home. That arm needs proper casting." "I will. Jack, thank you for answering, for listening, for crying for her. She deserves to be cried over by her hero." Jack didn't correct her use of the word hero this time. After Claire hung up, he sat in his workshop until dawn, watching the sun slowly illuminate the mountains through the window. When Lily came looking for him at 7, she found him asleep at his workbench, his phone still in his hand, Emily's letter spread out beside him like a map to a place he wasn't ready to visit but could no longer pretend didn't exist. Lily stood in the workshop doorway for a long moment, studying her father's sleeping form hunched over the workbench. The morning light caught the silver threading through his dark hair, the deep lines around his eyes that had appeared after her mother died. She'd never seen Emily's letter before, but she recognized the careful handwriting of someone her age, saw the way her father's hand still partially covered it, like he was protecting something precious. She moved quietly to his side, gently touching his shoulder. "Dad?" Jack startled awake, disoriented for a moment before his eyes focused on his daughter. He quickly folded Emily's letter, but not before Lily had read the last line. "Thank you for my life." "You okay?" Lily asked, though she could see he wasn't. His eyes were red-rimmed, puffy in a way she hadn't seen in years. "Yeah, kiddo, just couldn't sleep. Worked on the table instead." Lily ran her hand over the table's surface, which was now so smooth it felt like silk. "You sanded this for hours. It was already perfect yesterday." Jack stood, stretching muscles stiff from sleeping upright. "Nothing's ever perfect. There's always more work to do." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Lily asked quietly. "That you're not perfect, so there's always more work to do on yourself too." Sometimes Jack forgot how perceptive his daughter was, how she could see through his walls like they were made of glass. "Since when did you become a therapist?" "Since my dad started crying over letters from 12-year-old girls." She held up her hand before he could protest. "I'm not judging. I think it's good. I think it's about time." Jack wanted to argue, to maintain the fiction that everything was fine, that their life was complete as it was. But looking at his daughter's earnest face, he couldn't lie to her. "Claire's daughter wrote it," he admitted. "Emily. The girl from the bridge." Lily nodded like she'd already figured that out. "What did she say?" Jack handed her the letter, watching as she read it carefully, her expression shifting from curiosity to something deeper, more complex. "Oh, Dad," she whispered when she finished. "She calls you her hero." "I'm not—" "You are," Lily interrupted. "To her, to all of them. And pretending you're not doesn't change that." She carefully refolded the letter, handing it back to him. "Mom would want you to see that." "You don't know what your mom would want." "Yes, I do." Lily's voice was firm, older than her 12 years. "Because I know who she was. She was kind and generous, and she believed in helping people. She would hate that you've been punishing yourself for saving children. She would hate that you've been alone for 8 years because you think you don't deserve happiness." Jack sank back onto the stool. "Lily, I remember her, Dad. Not as much as I wish I did, but I remember. She used to sing while she painted. She made the best chocolate chip cookies, but always burned the first batch. She cried at commercials with puppies. And she loved you more than anything in the world except me." Lily moved closer, taking her father's rough hands in her smaller ones. "She would want you to forgive yourself." "I can't." "Can't? Or won't?" Before Jack could answer, his phone buzzed with a text. It was from Claire. "Boarding now? Thank you for everything." Then a moment later, "Emily wants me to tell you she's swimming in a meet next weekend. Backstroke. She wanted you to know she's not afraid of the water anymore." Jack stared at the message, his throat tight. Lily read it over his shoulder. "You should go," she said simply. "What?" "To the swim meet. You should go watch her." "Lily, No, that's not happening." "Why not?" "Because it's complicated, because it would confuse things, because you're scared," Lily finished. "It's okay to be scared, Dad. Remember what you taught me? Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs to be done anyway," Jack finished, the words sounding hollow when applied to himself. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Strange, they rarely had visitors, especially this early. Jack went to answer it, Lily trailing behind. It was Tom Morrison from down the road, his face grim. "Jack, sorry to bother you, but there's been an accident. The Hendricks kid, Bobby, fell off his bike on the trail. Hit his head pretty bad. His parents are in Billings for the day, and the ambulance is 40 minutes out. I know you have medical training from before. Could you—" Jack was already moving, grabbing his emergency kit from the hall closet. "Where?" "Quarter-mile up the Bear Creek Trail." "Lily, stay here." "I'm coming," she said, already pulling on her jacket. "You might need help." There was no time to argue. They jogged behind Tom through the forest, Jack's kit bouncing against his hip. He could hear voices ahead, see a small crowd gathered around something on the ground. Bobby Hendricks was 11, one of Lily's friends from the homeschool co-op. He was unconscious, blood pooling beneath his head, his bike twisted beside him. The other kids stood in a terrified circle, some crying. Jack dropped to his knees beside the boy, his hands automatically checking for pulse, breathing, pupil response. The head wound was bad, but not as bad as it looked. Head wounds always bled dramatically. But the unconsciousness was concerning, and the way his left arm was bent suggested a serious break. "Everyone step back," Jack commanded, his voice carrying an authority he hadn't used in 8 years. "Lily, get me the neck brace from the kit. Tom, call the ambulance again. Tell them potential head trauma and broken humerus. Everyone else, I need you to go wait by the road to flag down the ambulance when it arrives." People moved, responding to the confidence in his voice. Jack worked with practiced efficiency, stabilizing Bobby's neck, controlling the bleeding, splinting the arm. Lily assisted without being asked, anticipating what he needed like she'd done this before. Which, Jack realized with a start, she had, just 2 nights ago with Claire. Bobby came to as Jack was checking his pupils again, confused and crying for his mom. "Hey, buddy," Jack said gently. "You're okay. You had a fall, but you're going to be fine. What's your favorite superhero?" Spider-Man?" Bobby stammered. "Well, Spider-Man falls all the time, right? And he always gets back up. That's what you're going to do. But first, we need to get you checked out at the hospital. Make sure that hard head of yours is okay." He kept Bobby talking, keeping him conscious and calm until the ambulance arrived. The paramedics took over smoothly. One of them, a young woman named Sandra, nodding appreciatively at Jack's field treatment. "Nice work," she said. "You a doctor?" "No, I've had some training." She looked at him more closely, and Jack saw the moment of recognition in her eyes. This was the problem with being a hero. People remembered. "You're him," she said quietly. "The bridge. 8 years ago. My cousin was on that bus." Jack turned away, but Sandra caught his arm. "She's a nurse now, because of you. Said if someone could save her life, she wanted to learn to save others." Before Jack could respond, the ambulance was leaving, Bobby safely loaded inside. The crowd dispersed slowly, everyone patting Jack on the back, thanking him. He endured it stiffly, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Walking home with Lily, she was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, as their cabin came into view, she spoke. "You can't help it, can you? Saving people. It was just basic first aid." "No, it wasn't. It was you being who you are, who you've always been, who you were before Mom died, and who you still are, even though you've tried to hide it." Jack didn't answer. Inside the cabin, he washed Bobby's blood off his hands, watching the pink water swirl down the drain. His phone buzzed, another text from Claire. "Landed safe. Emily wants to know if her hero likes chocolate chip cookies. She wants to send you some." Before he could overthink it, Jack typed back, "Tell her yes. But the first batch always has to be slightly burned. That's what makes them perfect." Claire's response was immediate. "How did you know she always burns the first batch?" Jack smiled despite himself, thinking of Sarah in their old kitchen, waving smoke away from the oven, laughing at her consistency in burning cookies. Some things, apparently, were universal. Over the next weeks, a strange new rhythm developed. Claire would send photos and updates about Emily, never pushing, never asking for more than Jack was willing to give. Emily's swim meet, she won her heat. Emily's science project on water safety, she got an A+. Emily teaching younger kids to swim at the Y, because someone taught me to be brave, she'd apparently told her mother. Jack found himself looking forward to the messages, even as they hurt. He started responding more, offering advice when Claire mentioned Emily was struggling with geometry, suggesting books when she expressed interest in woodworking. Lily watched this unfold with satisfaction, occasionally adding her own input. "Tell her to try Khan Academy for the math," she'd suggest, reading over his shoulder. Or, "Emily would probably like that fantasy series I just finished." It was 3 weeks after the landslide when everything shifted again. Jack was in his workshop, finishing a custom bookshelf for a client in Missoula, when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a San Francisco number he didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Jack Callahan?" The voice was professional, clinical. "Yes." "Mr. Callahan, this is Dr. Patricia Reeves at UCSF Medical Center. You're listed as an emergency contact for Claire Hartley." Jack's blood went cold. "What happened?" "Ms. Hartley was in a car accident this morning. She's stable, but she's asking for you. She's quite insistent, actually." "How bad?" "She has a concussion, some bruised ribs, and her previously broken arm was re-injured. As I said, she's stable, but she's going to need some help when she's discharged. She said your family?" Jack was already walking toward the house, his mind racing. "I'll be there as soon as I can. Visiting hours are—" He hung up, already pulling up flight information on his phone. There was a flight from Kalispell to San Francisco leaving in 4 hours. He could make it if he left now. "Lily!" he called, entering the house. She appeared from her room, took one look at his face, and said, "What's wrong?" "Claire's been in an accident. She's okay, but—" He paused, realizing what he was about to do. "I need to go to San Francisco." Lily nodded like she'd been expecting this. "I'll pack your bag. You call Mrs. Morrison, see if I can stay with them." Lily. "Dad, go. She needs you. Emily needs you." "This doesn't mean—" "I know what it doesn't mean," Lily said, already pulling his overnight bag from the closet. "It means you're helping someone who helped us. That's all." But they both knew it was more than that. The flight felt endless. Jack stared out the window at the clouds below, thinking about Claire in a hospital bed, thinking about Emily dealing with another trauma, thinking about how life seemed to be a series of circles, patterns, repeating until you learned whatever lesson you were supposed to learn. He took a taxi directly from SFO to the hospital, a massive complex that felt like a city unto itself. At the information desk, he said he was there to see Claire Hartley, and the volunteer directed him to the third floor. She was awake when he entered the room, her head bandaged, her left arm in a new cast. Her face lit up when she saw him, then immediately crumpled. "You came," she whispered. "You listed me as an emergency contact?" "I didn't know who else. Emily's with my neighbor, but she's scared, and I can't drive, and the doctors say I can't be alone for at least 48 hours because of the concussion, and Claire," Jack moved to the chair beside her bed. "It's okay. I'm here." She started crying then, deep sobs that clearly hurt her bruised ribs. Jack didn't think, just took her good hand in his, letting her grip it like an anchor. "The other driver ran a red light," she gasped between sobs. "Just like with your Sarah. And all I could think was that Emily was going to lose me the way you lost your wife. And I couldn't. But you didn't," Jack said firmly. "You're here. You're okay. Emily still has her mom." Claire's grip tightened. "I'm so scared, Jack. I'm trying to be strong for her, but I'm terrified. What if next time?" "There doesn't have to be a next time." "You can't know that. You couldn't know it was Sarah." "No," Jack agreed quietly. "I couldn't. But she lived every day she had fully. She painted and burned cookies and loved completely. That's all any of us can do." Claire looked at him through tear-swollen eyes. "Is that what you've been doing? Living fully?" Jack was quiet for a moment, then, "No, I've been surviving. There's a difference." "What changed your mind? About coming here?" "You needed help," Jack said simply. "And despite my best efforts to convince myself otherwise, I'm still someone who helps when needed." A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse entered, but behind her was a young girl with Claire's dark hair and those striking green eyes from the photos. Emily. In person, she was smaller than Jack had expected, more fragile-looking, but her eyes were sharp, assessing, older than her 12 years. "Mom?" Emily rushed to the bed, then stopped short when she saw Jack. Her eyes widened, taking in his face, his build, then dropping to his hands still holding her mother's. Her gaze fixed on the scar on his forearm, and Jack saw the exact moment she understood. "It's you," she breathed. Jack gently released Claire's hand and stood. "You must be Emily. But Emily had already crossed the space between them, throwing her arms around his waist in a fierce hug that knocked the breath out of him. He stood frozen, arms at his sides, completely unprepared for the reality of this child, this life he'd saved, pressed against him. "Emily," Claire said softly. "Let him breathe, sweetheart." But Emily held on tighter. "You're real," she said into his shirt. "You're actually real." Jack's arms moved without his permission, carefully encircling the girl. She was so small, so alive, heart beating rapidly against him like a bird's. He thought about the last time he'd held her, unconscious, soaking wet, weighing nothing in his arms as he'd carried her to safety. "Thank you," Emily whispered. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for saving my mom. Thank you for being real." Jack's throat was too tight to speak. Over Emily's head, he met Claire's eyes. She was crying again, but smiling too, watching her daughter embrace her hero. When Emily finally pulled back, she immediately started talking, words tumbling over each other in a rush. "Mom said you live in Montana, and you have a daughter my age named Lily, and you make furniture, and you know how to fix broken arms, and you pulled Mom out of a landslide just like you pulled me out of the river, and—" "Emily," Claire said gently, "breathe." Emily took a dramatic breath, then continued. "Can I ask you something?" Jack nodded, retaking his seat. "When you saved me, were you scared?" "Terrified," Jack admitted. "But you did it anyway. Sometimes being scared doesn't matter. Sometimes you just have to act." Emily nodded solemnly, then pulled something from her backpack. It was a wooden box, handmade, with a brass latch. "I made this in shop class. Well, Mr. Peterson helped a lot, but I did most of it. It's for you." Jack took the box, running his fingers over it. The craftsmanship was amateur but earnest, the corners not quite square, the finish uneven in places. It was perfect. Inside was a stack of papers, the letters she'd written him over the years, tied with a purple ribbon, the same purple as the jacket she'd been wearing that day. "I know Mom probably told you about these," Emily said, suddenly shy, "but I wanted you to have them, all of them, so you know that every year, every single year, I remembered you." Jack held the box carefully, like it might shatter. "Thank you, Emily. This is beautiful." "I'm not very good at woodworking yet," Emily said, "but Mom said you could teach me, if you wanted, if we came to visit sometime." Jack looked at Claire, who shrugged carefully. "I might have mentioned that possibility, very hypothetically." "We could bring cookies," Emily added. "I make really good chocolate chip cookies, except the first batch. I always burn the first batch. Mom says it's genetic." Jack found himself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in longer than he could remember. Must be a universal law. Emily beamed at him, and in her smile Jack saw echoes of every future she might have: doctor, artist, mother, whatever she chose to become. All of it possible because 8 years ago he hadn't driven past. "I need to make some calls," Jack said, standing. "Figure out a place to stay. Arrange—" "You'll stay with us," Claire said firmly. "We have a guest room and I'm going to need help for a few days. Claire, please." Her voice was quiet but insistent. "You came all this way. Let us take care of you for once." Jack wanted to argue, to maintain his boundaries, his careful distance, but looking at Emily's hopeful face, at Claire's bandaged head, he found his resistance crumbling. "Okay," he said. "A few days." Emily actually squealed, hugging him again before he could prepare himself. This time, he hugged her back immediately, naturally, like his arms remembered how to hold a child who wasn't his own. The doctor discharged Claire that afternoon with strict instructions about concussion care. Jack drove them home in Claire's car, Emily chattering nonstop from the back seat about school, her friends, her swim team, barely pausing for breath. "Does she always talk this much?" Jack asked Claire quietly. "Only when she's happy," Claire replied, "or nervous. Right now, I think she's both." Their house was in a nice neighborhood in Marine, the kind of place with tree-lined streets and kids riding bikes on the sidewalks. It was warm and lived in, art on every wall, books stacked on every surface. Emily immediately gave him a tour, narrating everything like a museum guide. "This is where Mom works when she works from home, which is a lot lately. This is where I practice piano. This is the kitchen where I burn cookies. This is the living room where we watch movies every Friday. Oh, can we watch a movie tonight? Jack can pick." "Emily, slow down," Claire said from the couch, where Jack had insisted she rest. Jack might be tired from traveling. But Jack wasn't tired. He was overwhelmed, yes, completely out of his element, certainly. But something about Emily's enthusiasm, her pure joy at his presence, was infectious. "A movie sounds good," he heard himself say. They ordered pizza, Emily's choice, and watched something animated about dragons that Emily quoted along with. She sat between Jack and Claire on the couch, occasionally glancing at Jack like she was making sure he was still there. Halfway through the movie, she fell asleep, her head dropping onto Jack's shoulder. He froze, afraid to move, afraid to disturb her. "She feels safe," Claire said softly. "She doesn't usually fall asleep around strangers." "I'm not a stranger to her. She's been writing to me for 8 years. "No," Claire agreed. "You're not a stranger. You're her hero." "I'm just a man who happened to be driving by at the right time." Claire shifted carefully to look at him. "Do you really believe that? That it was just coincidence? That there wasn't some reason you were there that day?" "If there was a reason, then there was also a reason Sarah died. I can't accept that. What if the reason wasn't about Sarah dying? What if it was about 21 children living? What if Sarah's death was the tragedy, but your being there was the miracle?" Jack didn't answer. On his shoulder, Emily shifted, mumbling something in her sleep. Without thinking, he adjusted his position to make her more comfortable, his hand coming to rest protectively on her head. "You're good at this," Claire observed, "taking care of people." "I had a lot of practice with Lily when she was younger." "It's more than that. It's who you are. You can't help but protect, to save, to care, even when you're trying not to." They finished the movie in silence. When it ended, Jack carefully lifted Emily, carrying her to her room. It was covered in posters of swimmers and scientists, a periodic table on one wall, swim medals hanging from a corkboard. On her nightstand was a framed photo, a newspaper clipping from 8 years ago showing the rescue scene at the bridge. The hero's face wasn't visible, but his distinctive scar was. Jack tucked her in, and Emily stirred, eyes fluttering open. "You're still here," she said sleepily. "Yeah, kid, I'm still here." "Good." She closed her eyes again. "Don't leave without saying goodbye, okay? Promise?" "I promise." Back in the living room, Claire had made tea, moving carefully with her injuries. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. "Thank you," Claire finally said, "for coming, for being here, for letting her see that you're real. She's a great kid." "She is. And a lot of that is because of what you gave her. Not just life, but the story of being saved. It shaped who she became. Every time something was hard, she'd say, 'If I survived a bridge collapse, I can survive this.'" Jack thought about Lily, how she'd taken strength from her mother's memory, from the story of their family's survival. Maybe that's what stories were for, not just to explain the past, but to give us courage for the future. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily. "How is she?" "They're both okay," he replied. "I'll be here a few days." "Good. Mrs. Morrison is teaching me to knit. It's actually fun. Tell Emily I said hi." "I will." "Love you, kiddo. Love you too, Dad. I'm proud of you." Jack stared at the message for a long moment. Proud of him. For what? For finally facing the past? For allowing himself to be needed again? "Everything okay?" Claire asked. "Yeah, just Lily checking in." "You should bring her next time. Emily would love to meet her." "Next time?" Claire met his eyes steadily. "I'm an optimist." The guest room in Claire's house had a window that faced east, and Jack woke to unfamiliar sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, he couldn't place where he was. The bed too soft, the sounds wrong, no mountain wind or creaking pine. Then he heard Emily's voice from downstairs, animated and bright, and reality settled back around him. He'd been here 3 days now. 3 days of helping Claire manage her concussion symptoms, of making sure she took her medication on schedule, of cooking meals because she got dizzy when she stood too long. 3 days of Emily showing him every school project she'd ever done, every swim trophy she'd earned, every piece of art she'd created. 3 days of pretending this was normal, that he belonged in this warm house with these people whose lives he'd accidentally saved. His phone showed 2 missed calls from Lily and a text. "Mrs. Morrison says you can stay as long as you need. I'm fine. Stop worrying." He called her back, needing to hear her voice. "Hey, Dad?" She sounded cheerful, relaxed. "How's the patient?" "Stubborn. Keeps trying to work even though she's supposed to be resting." "Sounds like someone else I know." He could hear the smile in Lily's voice. "How's Emily?" "She's..." Jack paused, looking for the right word. "She's intense, like a force of nature. She talks constantly and has opinions about everything, and she's read every book in existence." "So she's perfect for you then. You need someone to challenge all that brooding silence." "I don't brood. Dad, you literally have a workshop where you go to brood while sanding things that don't need sanding." Before Jack could defend himself, he heard Emily calling from downstairs. "Jack, I made breakfast. Well, I made toast, but I put fancy jam on it." "Go," Lily said. "I'll talk to you later." "And Dad, it's okay to enjoy this. It's okay to be happy." Jack wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that happiness felt like a betrayal of grief he'd carried for so long. But Emily was calling again, and Claire was probably trying to get up despite doctor's orders, and somehow he'd become responsible for these people he barely knew. Downstairs, he found Claire sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open despite his explicit instructions to avoid screens. Emily was indeed proudly presenting toast with what appeared to be 3 different types of jam. "You're supposed to be resting," Jack told Claire, closing the laptop. "I have a company to run." "You have a concussion, a mild concussion. There's no such thing as a mild brain injury." They'd had this argument every morning. Claire would try to work, Jack would stop her, Emily would take his side, and somehow they'd developed a rhythm to it, almost like a dance. "Mom's terrible at resting," Emily informed him, sliding a plate of toast his way. "Even worse than you." "I rest," Jack protested. Lily says you haven't taken a vacation in 8 years. Jack looked at her sharply. When did you talk to Lily? We text, Emily said casually, as if this wasn't news. She's really cool. She's teaching me about wood grain patterns, and I'm teaching her about molecular biology. You're teaching her molecular biology? Well, the basics. Did you know that DNA repair mechanisms are similar to how wood fibers heal after damage? It's all about structural integrity. Claire laughed, then winced, hand going to her head. She does this, finds connections between everything. Last week she explained how swimming technique relates to airplane design. It's all fluid dynamics, Emily said seriously. Jack found himself smiling despite his attempt to maintain some distance. These morning conversations had become dangerously comfortable, dangerously close to feeling like family. His phone rang, an unknown Montana number. Expecting a client, he answered, Mr. Callahan? This is Principal Davies from Mountain View Middle School. I'm calling about Lily. Jack's blood went cold. Is she okay? She's fine, but there's been an incident. She got into an altercation with another student. We need you to come in. An altercation? Lily doesn't fight. I'm afraid she did today. Rather effectively, actually. We need to discuss consequences. Jack ran a hand through his hair. I'm in California. Family emergency. Can this wait until the other students' parents are demanding immediate action? If you can't be here, we'll need to proceed with suspension. I'll figure something out. Don't do anything until you hear from me. He hung up to find Claire and Emily watching him with concern. Lily's in trouble at school. Fighting, apparently. I need to get back. I'll book you a flight, Claire said, reaching for her laptop. You're concussed. You're not looking at screens. Then I'll do it, Emily said, already pulling out her phone. What airport? But Claire was shaking her head. We're all going. What? No, Claire, you can't fly with a concussion. Then we'll drive. Drive? To Montana? That's over 1,000 miles. 15 hours according to Google, Emily said, still on her phone. We could do it in 2 days, stop overnight somewhere. This is insane, Jack said. You're injured. You need rest. What I need, Claire said firmly, is to help the person who's been taking care of us for 3 days. And Emily's on spring break anyway. Mom's right, Emily said. Plus, I want to meet Lily in person and see Montana and your workshop. And this isn't a vacation, Jack said, but he could already feel his resistance crumbling. No, Claire agreed. It's friends helping friends. Unless you're going to tell me we're not friends after you've been sleeping in my house and making me take my medication and watching Disney movies with my daughter? Jack looked between them. Claire determined despite her injuries, Emily practically vibrating with excitement. These people who'd somehow become important to him in the span of days. Fine, he said, but I'm driving, and we're stopping every 2 hours so you can rest. And if you start feeling worse, Emily squealed, hugging him before running upstairs to pack. Claire smiled, that soft smile that made something in Jack's chest tighten. Thank you, she said, for letting us do this. You're the one doing me a favor. No, Jack, you've been taking care of people your whole life. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you too. They left within 2 hours, Claire's SUV loaded with probably too much luggage for a simple trip. Emily had packed as if they were moving permanently, including her laptop, 3 textbooks, and inexplicably, a microscope. It's portable, she explained when Jack raised an eyebrow. And Lily might want to see cell structures. The drive started easily enough. Emily kept up a running commentary on everything they passed. Claire dozed in the passenger seat as her medication kicked in, and Jack found himself relaxing into the rhythm of the road. It had been years since he'd taken a trip like this, since he'd been anywhere with people who weren't Lily. They stopped in Sacramento for lunch, Emily insisting on In-N-Out Burger because she'd read about it but never been. Watching her methodically analyze her burger like it was a science experiment made Jack laugh. The sauce has relish, she announced, and mayonnaise, but there's something else. Thousand Island dressing, Jack said. Basically. But why is it good? Individually, these ingredients shouldn't create synergy. Claire caught his eye, smiling at her daughter's intensity. Everything's a puzzle to solve, she said softly. Nothing wrong with that, Jack replied, thinking of Lily at the same age. taking apart every device in their house to understand how it worked. They drove through the afternoon, crossing into Nevada as the sun began to set. Emily had moved to the back seat, reading what appeared to be a college-level chemistry textbook while occasionally announcing interesting facts. "Did you know that trauma can actually change your DNA expression?" she said suddenly. "Like, the same genes you've always had start working differently after something really bad happens." Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. In the passenger seat, Claire shifted. "That's interesting, honey," Claire said carefully. "I've been reading about it because of, the bridge. I wanted to understand why I remember some things so clearly and other things not at all, and why I got so good at noticing everything after. Turns out, trauma can enhance certain cognitive functions as a survival mechanism." "Emily," Claire said gently, "maybe this isn't the time." "It's okay," Jack said, surprising himself. "What else did you learn?" Emily leaned forward between the seats. "That kids who survive near-death experiences often develop what they call post-traumatic growth. Like, they don't just go back to normal. They become better at empathy, more appreciative of life, more resilient. The brain rewires itself." "Is that what you think happened to you?" Jack asked, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. Emily was quiet for a moment. "I think almost dying taught me that life is fragile. But you taught me that people can be strong, that someone will jump into danger for a stranger. That changes a person too, knowing that kind of goodness exists." They stopped for the night in Winnemucca, a small casino town that seemed to exist primarily for travelers like them. The hotel was clean but anonymous, and they got connecting rooms. Emily immediately set up her laptop to video call Lily, who answered on the first ring. "Are you really coming?" Lily asked, her face filling the screen. "We're halfway there," Emily said excitedly. "Your dad's been telling us about the mountains and your workshop, and did he tell you about the trouble I'm in?" Jack moved into view. "What happened, kiddo?" Lily's face scrunched up, defensive and embarrassed at once. "Marcus Wheeler was saying stuff about Mom, about how she died. He said you let her die because you cared more about being a hero than your own family." Jack felt like he'd been punched. Claire's hand found his arm, squeezing gently. "So you hit him?" Jack asked, keeping his voice neutral. "I tried to walk away, like you taught me, but he kept going, kept saying awful things. And then he said you were probably glad she died because now you could play hero without feeling guilty. And I lost it." "Oh, honey," Claire said, moving into frame. "That must have been awful." Lily's eyes widened. "Ms. Claire, you're really there?" "We're all coming," Emily chimed in. "Road trip rescue mission." "But how's your mom going to handle Marcus's parents?" Lily asked. "They're horrible. His dad's a lawyer, and they think their kid walks on water." "Let me worry about that," Jack said. "You just sit tight. We'll be there tomorrow afternoon." After they hung up, Emily disappeared into her room to read, leaving Jack and Claire alone in the connecting doorway. "Marcus Wheeler's father is the kind of lawyer who threatens to sue if someone looks at his kid wrong," Jack said. "This is going to be messy." "Good thing you have your own lawyer then," Claire said. "You're a CEO, not a lawyer." I'm a CEO with a law degree and a whole legal team at my disposal." She pulled out her phone. "Give me the principal's number." "Claire, you don't have to—" "Jack, that little boy accused you of being glad your wife died, in front of your daughter. If you think I'm going to let that stand, you don't know me at all." There was a fierceness in her voice that Jack hadn't heard before. This was the woman who ran a tech company, who'd built something from nothing, who'd spent 8 years looking for him. "Why?" he asked suddenly. "Why do you care so much?" Claire looked at him for a long moment. "Because you saved my daughter. Because you're a good man who's been punishing himself for 8 years. Because Lily deserves better than to hear those lies. Because—" She paused, then seemed to gather her courage. "Because somewhere in the last few days, you became important to me. You and Lily, both." Jack didn't know what to say to that, how to process the warmth spreading through his chest. So he did what he always did when emotions got too close. He retreated. "You should rest. Long drive tomorrow." Claire nodded, understanding his need for space. "Good night, Jack." But sleep didn't come easily. Jack lay in the anonymous hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Lily defending him, about Claire ready to fight his battles, about Emily calling him family. Somewhere in the last few days, his carefully maintained walls had started crumbling, and he didn't know how to rebuild them. Wasn't sure he wanted to. They left early the next morning, Emily armed with coffee for everyone. She'd found a local cafe and charmed them into making Claire's complicated order exactly right. The girl had a gift for making friends everywhere she went, talking to strangers like they were already friends she hadn't met yet. "You're not like most kids your age," Jack observed as they got back on the highway. "Trauma-induced advanced maturity," Emily said matter-of-factly. "Plus, Mom always talked to me like an adult, even when I was little. She said kids rise or fall to meet expectations." "Smart woman, your mom." "The smartest," Emily agreed. "That's why she likes you. She has excellent judgment." Claire made a choking sound from the passenger seat. "Emily!" "What?" "It's true. You haven't dated anyone in like 3 years, and then Jack saves you from a landslide and you're all, Emily Grace Hartley. Stop talking right now." Jack kept his eyes firmly on the road, pretending he hadn't heard anything, but he could feel the heat in his face. In the rearview mirror, he saw Emily grinning, completely unrepentant. They crossed into Idaho by mid-morning, the landscape changing from desert to mountains. Emily had her face pressed to the window, commenting on geological formations and vegetation changes. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Even Jack found himself pointing out landmarks, telling stories about the region he'd never shared with anyone except Lily. "There," he said as they crested a hill. "Those peaks in the distance? That's where we live. Another 2 hours." "It's beautiful," Claire said softly. "I can see why you chose it." "It chose me, really. After everything, Lily and I just drove until we found somewhere that felt far enough away. The cabin was for sale, needed tons of work. It gave me something to do with my hands while I figured out how to be a single parent." "You did an amazing job," Claire said. "Lily's incredible. She raised herself mostly." "You need to stop saying that," Emily piped up from the back. "Parents who say their kids raised themselves are usually the ones who did the most raising. Like the very fact that you think she's independent means you gave her the security to be independent." Jack glanced at Claire. "Is she always this insightful?" "Always. It's occasionally terrifying." They stopped at the last town before home to get groceries. If they were having guests, Jack needed to stock up. Emily insisted on coming in, fascinated by the small-town market that was nothing like the Whole Foods she was used to. "They have actual butchers," she said in wonder. "Who know the names of the cows?" "Welcome to Montana," Jack said dryly. The checkout clerk, Mrs. Patterson, did a double-take when she saw him with Claire and Emily. "Jack Callahan as I live and breathe, and with company. Mrs. Patterson, this is Claire and her daughter Emily. They're visiting." Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up with the kind of interest that meant the entire town would know about his visitors within hours. "How wonderful! Lily must be so excited." "She doesn't know we're coming," Emily offered. "It's a surprise." "Is it now?" Mrs. Patterson was practically vibrating with curiosity. "Well, any friends of the Callahans are welcome here." Outside loading groceries, Claire laughed. "She's going to tell everyone, isn't she?" "Everyone. By the time we get to the cabin, the whole town will have theories about who you are." "And who am I?" Claire asked, something teasing in her voice. Jack looked at her, bruised but smiling, standing in a small-town parking lot 1,000 miles from her CEO life, ready to fight for his daughter, and found he didn't have an answer. Or rather, he had too many answers, none of them simple. "Someone who should be resting instead of taking road trips," he said finally. The road to the cabin was winding, narrow, exactly as treacherous as Emily had hoped. "This is like something out of a movie," she said. "Do you get bears?" "Sometimes. Lily names them all, which I keep telling her is a bad idea." "She names the bears?" Emily was delighted. "What are their names?" "There's Frederick, who likes to knock over trash cans. Maud, who has 3 cubs. And Lily insists there's one called Sir Reginald, but I think she made him up." Claire was laughing now, really laughing, and Jack realized how much he liked the sound, how much he'd missed having laughter in his truck, conversation on these familiar roads. The cabin came into view just as the sun was starting to slant through the trees. It looked different somehow, seeing it through their eyes. Smaller maybe, but also more welcoming than he remembered. Lily must have seen them coming because she burst out the front door, still in her school clothes, a bruise visible on her cheek. "Dad!" She ran to him, and he caught her in a hug that lifted her off her feet. When had she gotten so tall? When had she started looking so much like Sarah? "You okay, kiddo?" "Better now." She pulled back, looking at Claire and Emily with undisguised curiosity. "You really came." "Road trip of the century," Emily said, bouncing on her toes. "Your dad let me pick the music for 3 whole hours." "And you picked what exactly?" Lily asked. "Science podcasts." Lily laughed. "Of course you did." She looked at Claire, suddenly shy. "How are you feeling? Your head, I mean?" "Better," Claire said. "Thanks to your dad. He's been taking good care of us." "He does that," Lily said, giving her father a meaningful look, "even when he pretends he doesn't want to." They moved inside, Emily immediately asking for a tour, Lily obliging with enthusiasm. Jack and Claire were left in the kitchen, surrounded by grocery bags. "Your daughter has a black eye," Claire observed. "Your daughter brought a microscope on vacation. It's portable. It's ridiculous." They were standing closer than necessary, Claire reaching up to touch the stress lines around his eyes. "You're worried about tomorrow, the principal, the parents. It's going to be ugly. The Wheelers don't back down, and they have the kind of influence that makes problems for people like me." "People like you?" "Working class. Single parent, outsider." Claire's hand moved to his cheek. "Jack, I run a company worth $200 million. I have lawyers who make lawyers cry. The Wheelers are about to learn what real influence looks like." "You don't have to "Yes, I do. That's what friends do. They show up. They fight for each other. They take road trips with concussions to help with school drama." "Is that what we are? Friends?" Claire was quiet for a moment, her hand still on his face. "I don't know what we are, Jack. I know you saved my life twice. I know my daughter adores you. I know I feel safer with you than I felt with anyone in years. I know that when the hospital called, you dropped everything and flew to San Francisco." "What do you call that?" Before Jack could answer, Emily and Lily burst back into the kitchen, talking animatedly about something involving the workshop and a project they wanted to start immediately. "After dinner," Jack said automatically, "and homework." "We don't have homework," Emily said. "Spring break." "I'm suspended, remember?" Lily added. "You're not suspended yet," Claire said, pulling out her phone. "What time is the meeting tomorrow?" 9 a.m., Lily said. "Dad, seriously, the Wheelers are going to make this into a huge thing. Marcus's mom is on the school board." "Then it's good we have our own huge thing," Claire said, typing rapidly. "Emily, remember Mr. Davidson from the California Education Committee? The one who wanted you to sponsor that STEM program? That's him. His brother runs the Montana Education Department." She looked up from her phone, smiling in a way that was slightly terrifying. "The Wheelers aren't the only ones with connections." Jack stared at her. "You're going to call in favors for a middle school fight?" "I'm going to ensure that a family who's been through enough doesn't get railroaded by bullies with law degrees." She went back to typing. "Also, I'm very good at this. Ask anyone who's tried to hostile take over my company." Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Emily and Lily had immediately bonded, talking over each other about books and science and art. They'd apparently been texting constantly for weeks, sharing inside jokes Jack didn't understand. Watching them together, he saw what Lily had been missing, a friend who understood her, who spoke her language. "We should do an experiment," Emily was saying, "about wood density and water absorption for my science fair project." "We have tons of different wood samples in the shop," Lily said. "Dad saves everything." "I don't save everything. You have a box labeled wood scraps too small to use but too nice to throw away," Lily pointed out. "Those have sentimental value." "They're wood scraps, Dad. Some of them are from important projects." Claire caught his eye, smiling. "A sentimentalist disguised as a pragmatist." "A pack rat disguised as a craftsman," Lily corrected. After dinner, the girls disappeared to the workshop, leaving Jack and Claire on the porch. The night was clear, stars brilliant in a way they never were in cities. Claire was wrapped in one of Jack's flannel jackets, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly right. "Thank you," Jack said suddenly, "for coming." for caring about Lily, for all of it. Thank you for letting us, Claire replied, for letting us in, even a little. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the girls' laughter from the workshop, watching the stars. Jack thought about walls and bridges, about the things we lose and the things we find, about how sometimes salvation comes from unexpected directions. His phone buzzed. An email from the principal, forwarded from Claire's lawyer. After reviewing the situation and speaking with the Montana Department of Education, we've decided to handle this matter with peer mediation rather than suspension. All parties will meet tomorrow to discuss appropriate resolutions. How did you? I told you. Real influence isn't about threatening people. It's about reminding them that actions have consequences and that bullying, whether from children or their parents, won't be tolerated. The Wheelers are going to be furious. Good. Maybe they'll think twice before their son spreads lies about a good man's worst day. Jack looked at her. This woman who'd appeared in his life through disaster but had somehow become something else entirely. I don't know how to thank you. You don't thank family, Claire said simply. Is that what we are now? Family. Claire was quiet for a moment, looking at the stars. My family was just Emily and me for so long, but sitting here watching our daughters become friends, having dinner together, maybe family isn't just about blood. Maybe it's about choosing to show up for each other. Before Jack could respond, the workshop door burst open, Emily and Lily emerging covered in sawdust. We made something, Emily announced proudly, holding up what appeared to be a lopsided picture frame. It's terrible, Lily laughed, but it's ours. First attempts are supposed to be terrible, Jack said, standing. That's how you know you're learning. Like burned cookies, Emily said, grinning. Exactly like burned cookies. As they all moved inside, Claire's hand brushed his, just for a moment, not holding, just touching. A reminder that he wasn't alone in this anymore, that somewhere between a landslide and a road trip, between disaster and laughter, they'd become something more than strangers, more than friends. Family, maybe. Or at least the beginning of one. The morning of the school meeting arrived gray and tense, with clouds gathering over the mountains like spectators at a fight. Jack stood at his bedroom window, watching the sunrise paint the peaks gold while his stomach churned with familiar anxiety. He'd faced down landslides and river currents, but somehow confronting small-town politics in a middle school conference room felt more daunting. A soft knock at his door interrupted his brooding. Claire stood there, already dressed in what Emily had called her scary business clothes, a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jack made in a month. Her hair pulled back in a way that meant business. You clean up nice, Jack said, trying for levity. This is my armor, Claire replied, adjusting her collar. The Wheelers need to understand they're not dealing with someone they can intimidate. You know you don't have to do this. It's not your fight. Claire stepped into the room, closing the distance between them. Jack, when are you going to understand? Your fights are my fights now. Lily's battles are Emily's battles. That's what we chose when we got in that car and drove here. You chose. I just agreed. No, Claire said firmly. You chose too. When you answered the hospital's call, when you let us into your home, when you started texting me about Emily's swim meets. Every small choice has been leading us here. From downstairs came the sound of the girls laughing over breakfast, Emily's voice carrying, No, seriously, if we present it as a chemistry experiment about oxidation in wood fibers, they'll have to let us enter the senior division. They're planning to take over the science fair, Jack said, grateful for the distraction. Good. Let them take over the world while they're at it. Claire straightened his collar unnecessarily, her fingers lingering. But first, we handle the Wheelers. The drive to school was quiet, Lily sitting rigidly in the back seat while Emily held her hand. Jack had tried to convince Emily to stay at the cabin, but she'd refused. Lily's my friend, she'd said simply. Friends show up. The school parking lot was already half full despite the early hour. Jack recognized several cars. News traveled fast in a small town, and apparently everyone wanted to witness the showdown between the Callahans and the Wheelers. Vultures, Lily muttered. Witnesses, Claire corrected. Much harder for the Wheelers to spin this their way with an audience. Principal Davies met them at the entrance, his face carefully neutral. He was a decent man, Jack knew, but one who preferred the path of least resistance. The Wheelers had been making his life hell for 3 days, and it showed in the stress lines around his eyes. "Mr. Callahan," he said, then paused, taking in Claire's presence. "And you are?" "Claire Hartley," she said, offering a handshake that looked professional, but that Jack could see was deliberately firm. "I'm here as the family's advocate." "I wasn't aware Mr. Callahan had retained counsel." "I'm not counsel. I'm a concerned friend with significant experience in conflict resolution. I believe you spoke with my associate yesterday about the Department of Education's interest in this matter?" Davies paled slightly. "Yes, we received that communication. The Wheelers weren't pleased." "I imagine not," Claire said smoothly. "Shall we?" The conference room was already occupied. Marcus Wheeler sat between his parents, looking smaller than the bully Lily had described. His father, Richard Wheeler, stood as they entered. A power play, Jack recognized, making them come to him. "Callahan," Richard said coldly, ignoring Claire entirely. "Ready to discuss your daughter's violent outburst?" "Ready to discuss your son's harassment and defamation," Claire responded before Jack could speak. She took a seat without waiting to be invited, pulling out a leather portfolio. "Shall we start with the witnesses who heard Marcus's comments about Mr. Callahan's deceased wife?" Richard's jaw tightened. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone with the resources to ensure this matter is handled appropriately," Claire said calmly. "Now, we can do this the easy way, peer mediation, apologies all around, and everyone moves forward. Or we can do this the hard way, which involves depositions from every student who heard your son spreading malicious lies about a tragedy that killed a pregnant woman." "How dare you?" Marcus's mother, Patricia, started. "No," Claire interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "How dare your son tell a grieving daughter that her father was glad her mother died? How dare he weaponize a tragedy that saved 21 children's lives? How dare you raise a child who thinks cruelty is acceptable?" The room went silent. Even Principal Davies seemed to shrink back from the controlled fury in Claire's voice. Jack found himself staring at her, this woman who'd transformed from the gentle CEO he'd pulled from mud into something fierce and protective. "Marcus," Claire said, turning to the boy, "do you know what happened on April 15th, 8 years ago?" The boy shook his head, suddenly looking very young. 21 children nearly drowned when their school bus crashed into a river. Your cousin Sarah was one of them." Patricia gasped. "How did you—" "I know because my daughter was on that bus too," Claire continued. "Mr. Callahan saved them all, every single one. And while he was saving those children, his pregnant wife was dying in a car accident, trying to drive herself to the hospital. So when you told Lily that her father was glad her mother died, you weren't just being cruel. You were attacking a man who chose to save 21 families, even though it cost him his own." Marcus had gone pale, tears starting to form in his eyes. "I didn't— Sarah never said—" "Sarah doesn't know," Jack said quietly, speaking for the first time. "Her parents never told her who saved her. They thought it would be too heavy a burden. But she's alive, Marcus. Your cousin is alive because I made an impossible choice. And yes, it cost me everything. But I'd make the same choice again." Richard Wheeler seemed to deflate, sinking into his chair. "We didn't know. Marcus came home with a black eye, talking about how Lily attacked him. After he spent 20 minutes telling the entire cafeteria that my mom died because my dad didn't care enough to save her," Lily said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "After he said Dad was probably relieved she was gone so he could play hero without feeling guilty." "Is this true?" Patricia asked Marcus, her voice sharp. The boy nodded miserably. "Tommy Garrett said his dad knew someone who knew about the bridge thing, and how Mr. Callahan's wife died the same day, and we made up the rest. It was supposed to be a joke." "A joke?" Emily said suddenly, and everyone turned to look at her. "You thought orphaning someone was funny. You thought weaponizing the worst day of someone's life was entertainment?" "Emily," Claire said gently. But Emily wasn't done. "No, Mom, he needs to hear this. My mom spent 8 years looking for Mr. Callahan. 8 years trying to find the man who saved me so she could say thank you. And when she finally found him, you know what she discovered? A man so broken by loss that he'd hidden away in the mountains, convinced he didn't deserve forgiveness. Your joke wasn't just cruel, Marcus. It was evil. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Marcus was crying now, really crying, and even his parents looked shaken. I think, Principal Davies said carefully, we need to refocus on resolution. The resolution is simple, Claire said. Marcus apologizes, publicly, to ensure all the students who heard his lies also hear the truth. He does 20 hours of community service at the hospital, specifically in the children's ward, to learn some empathy. And the Wheelers make a donation to the water safety program at the community center, where kids learn to swim for free. That's extortion, Richard started. That's accountability, Claire corrected. Your son spread lies that could have destroyed a good man's reputation. This is actually quite lenient. And if we refuse? Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then I make some calls to the state education board, to the media. Imagine the headline, School board member's son bullies hero who saved 21 children. To my friend at the Times who's been wanting to do a retrospective on the Riverside Bridge rescue. Your choice. Jack watched the Wheelers exchange glances, saw the moment they realized they were outmaneuvered. But it was Marcus who spoke first. I'm sorry, he said, looking directly at Lily. What I said was awful. Your dad's a hero, and I was jealous because everyone thinks he's amazing and my dad just sues people. He glanced at his father. No offense. Richard's face was an interesting shade of red, but Patricia put her hand on his arm, keeping him silent. I'm sorry too, Lily said quietly. I shouldn't have hit you. Violence doesn't solve anything, but if you ever talk about my mother again, I won't, Marcus said quickly. I swear, I'll tell everyone I was lying. I'll tell them the truth about your dad. Principal Davies cleared his throat. Well, that seems like progress. Shall we discuss the specific terms of the resolution? The next hour was paperwork and negotiations, Claire handling everything with the efficiency of someone who'd brokered million-dollar deals. By the time they left, Marcus had a community service schedule, the Wheelers had committed to a substantial donation, and Lily was cleared to return to school the next day. In the parking lot, Richard Wheeler caught up to them. Callahan, he said stiffly, I owe you an apology. We didn't know about what you did. Sarah never told us she was on that bus. Her parents moved here from California when she was 5, never mentioned the accident. Jack nodded, not trusting himself to speak. You saved my niece, Richard continued, his voice cracking slightly. My brother's little girl, and I let my son... He trailed off, then seemed to gather himself. Thank you. For Sarah. For all of them. He walked away before Jack could respond, leaving them standing in the morning sun that had finally broken through the clouds. Well, Claire said lightly, that was fun. Jack laughed, surprising himself. Your definition of fun is terrifying. Mom's negotiation face is scary, Emily agreed. She once made a venture capitalist cry. He deserved it, Claire said. He tried to steal our patent. They drove home in comfortable silence, Lily and Emily already planning their science fair project in the back seat. But as they pulled into the cabin's driveway, they found an unexpected car waiting, a rental with California plates. A woman got out, tall and elegant, with streaks of silver in her dark hair. She looked nervous, almost fragile, clutching a manila envelope. Can I help you? Jack asked, immediately wary. Mr. Callahan? Jack Callahan? Yes. My name is Diana Morrison. Well, Diana Chen now. 8 years ago, my daughter was on a school bus that crashed into a river. Jack felt Claire's hand find his arm, grounding him. I remember, he said carefully. Maylin, my daughter, she was 5, wearing a yellow raincoat that made her look like a duckling. Diana's voice was thick with emotion. She was the last one you pulled out before the bus went under completely. Jack's memory flickered. A tiny girl, almost weightless, completely silent as he'd carried her to shore. She'd stared at him with huge dark eyes, never making a sound even as EMTs checked her over. She's 13 now, Diana continued, pulling a photograph from the envelope. It showed a serious-faced teenager with long black hair holding a violin. She's a musical prodigy, they say, headed to Juilliard's pre-college program. But she's never forgotten you. None of us have. Mrs. Chen, we tried to find you, Diana interrupted. All the families did. We wanted to thank you, to somehow repay you. When you disappeared, we thought maybe you didn't want to be found. But then last month, Maylin was researching the accident for a school project, and she found something. Security footage from a gas station near the bridge, from right before the collapse. She pulled out another paper, a grainy printout of a security photo. It showed Jack's old truck at a gas pump, the timestamp reading 2:47 p.m., April 15th, 13 minutes before the bridge collapse. You were on your way somewhere else, Diana said softly. The hospital is in the opposite direction from the bridge. You turned around for us. You chose to come back. Jack's throat was too tight to speak. He'd forgotten about stopping for gas, about the moment of decision when he'd heard the sirens, seen the smoke. We hired an investigator, Diana continued. Found out about your wife, about what it cost you, the families, all 21. We've been meeting, trying to figure out how to acknowledge what you sacrificed. She held out the envelope. This isn't enough. Nothing could ever be enough. But we wanted you to have this. Jack took the envelope with numb fingers, opening it slowly. Inside was a check for a stunning amount, signed by all 21 families. But it was the paper behind it that made his knees weak, a college fund already established, in Lily's name. For your daughter, Diana said, so she can pursue any dream she wants. Art school, if that's what she chooses. It's not compensation. Nothing could compensate for your loss, but it's 21 families saying thank you in the only way we could think of. I can't accept this, Jack said automatically. Yes, you can, Claire said firmly. You will. Diana smiled at Claire, seeming to understand something Jack didn't. You must be the woman from the landslide. The families have been following the story online. We're so glad Jack has someone looking out for him now. Before Claire could respond, more cars began arriving. Within minutes, the driveway was full, families emerging with children of various ages. Jack recognized some of them. The boy with the distinctive birthmark who'd been trapped under a seat. The twin girls who'd held hands the entire rescue, now young women in college sweatshirts. We wanted to do this together, someone said. A father holding a toddler who hadn't even been born when the accident happened. We meet every year on April 15th, but this year we wanted to meet you. What followed was a blur of introductions, tears, and thank yous. 21 families, each with their own story of what had happened after that day. The girl who'd become a paramedic, the boy who'd joined the Coast Guard, the twins who'd started a swimming program for underprivileged kids, lives that had continued, flourished, grown because of 30 seconds of decision on a rainy afternoon. Mei Lin Chen was the last to approach, still clutching her violin case. Without a word, she opened it and began to play. Something classical and complex that Jack didn't recognize but that made his chest ache with its beauty. When she finished, she looked directly at him. I wrote this piece for you, she said simply. It's called The Man Who Turned Around. I'm playing it at my Juilliard audition next month. Jack had no words, but Lily did, stepping forward to hug the older girl. It's beautiful, Lily said. You're beautiful. All of this is beautiful. The gathering moved inside, spilling through the cabin, onto the porch, into the yard. Someone had brought food, casseroles and salads and cookies that were deliberately burned on the bottom, which made Jack laugh through his tears. Emily and Lily became the unofficial hosts, showing people around, telling stories, bridging gaps between strangers who shared this one terrible, wonderful connection. Jack found himself on the porch with Oliver Barnes, the boy with the birthmark, now a young man in medical school. I remember you singing, Oliver said quietly, while you were pulling me out. You are my sunshine. My mom used to sing it to me. How did you know? I didn't, Jack admitted. It was just the first thing that came to mind, something to keep you calm. It worked. I still sing it when I'm scared. During my MCATs, during my first cadaver lab, it reminds me that someone thought I was worth saving. You were. You all were. So was your wife, Oliver said gently. I'm so sorry she died. But I need you to know, we all need you to know, that we've tried to be worthy of your sacrifice, to live lives that matter, that help others. Your wife's death wasn't meaningless if 21 people spend their lives making the world better because of it. As the afternoon wore on, Jack noticed Claire moving through the crowd. taking photos, collecting contact information, organizing with her particular blend of warmth and efficiency. She'd become the gravitational center somehow, pulling people together, making sure everyone was included. "She's something special," Diana Chen observed, appearing at Jack's elbow. "You're Claire." "She's not my—" "Isn't she, though?" Diana smiled knowingly. "The way she looks at you, the way you watch her when you think no one's noticing. Life gave you something beautiful out of something terrible. Don't waste it because you think you don't deserve it." Before Jack could respond, Emily appeared, dragging a teenage boy behind her. "Jack! This is Marcus. Not the mean one. Different Marcus. And he was on the bus too, and he does woodworking, and can we show him the workshop?" The workshop became another gathering point. Kids and teenagers examining Jack's pieces, asking questions about technique and wood grain. Someone suggested a group photo, and suddenly they were all arranging themselves on the porch. 21 rescue survivors, their families, Jack and Lily in the center. Claire and Emily somehow naturally included as if they'd always been part of this strange, extended family. "Wait!" Emily called out, setting up her phone on a timer. "Everyone needs to be in it." The photo, when Emily showed it to him later, was chaotic and perfect. Too many people crammed onto a porch that couldn't quite hold them all, everyone laughing at something Lily had said right before the shutter clicked. Jack's arm was around Lily, Claire pressed against his other side, Emily in front of them, making bunny ears behind someone's head. 21 families connected by tragedy and grace, by the split-second decision of a man who'd turned around. As the sun began to set, families slowly departed, each taking a moment to say goodbye properly. Phone numbers were exchanged, promises to stay in touch made. The twins invited Lily to their summer swim camp as a counselor in training. Oliver offered to mentor Emily when she was ready for pre-med programs. Connections formed, roots intertwining. Finally, it was just the four of them again, standing in the cabin that suddenly felt too quiet after so much life. "That was," Jack began, then stopped, overwhelmed. "Necessary," Claire finished. "They needed to see you, to thank you, and you needed to see what your choice created." 21 amazing people, Lily said, looking at the college fund paperwork. "Dad, this is enough for art school. Any art school." "It's your money," Jack said. "From them to you." "No," Lily corrected. "It's from them to us, to our family. All of it. The money, the connections, the love. It's for all of us." She looked pointedly at Claire and Emily when she said it, and Jack saw Claire's eyes fill with tears. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table that suddenly seemed too big for just 4 people, Emily pulled out her phone to show them something. "Look," she said, "we're trending." Someone had posted the group photo online with the caption, "21 school bus crash survivors reunite with the hero who saved them." It already had thousands of shares, hundreds of comments from people moved by the story. "Great," Jack groaned. "So much for privacy." "Privacy is overrated," Emily declared. "Besides, people should know. They should know that heroes exist, that good people do impossible things, that sometimes beauty comes from tragedy." "Very poetic for a scientist," Lily teased. "Science is poetry," Emily shot back, "just with more math." Later, after the girls had disappeared to plan world domination through their science fair project, Jack and Claire stood on the porch watching the stars emerge. "How do you feel?" Claire asked. "Like I've been hit by a truck, but also like maybe the universe is finally balanced again. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." She moved closer, her warmth a comfort against the cool night air. "Jack, can I ask you something?" "When Diana said I was your Claire, you didn't correct her. Not really." Jack was quiet for a long moment, weighing words, weighing the risk of honesty. "Because maybe you are. My Claire. If you want to be." Claire turned to face him fully. "I drove 15 hours with a concussion to defend your daughter from a bully. I think we're past the if stage." "It's complicated. You live in San Francisco. You have a company to run. Emily has school." "All logistics," Claire interrupted. "We can figure out logistics. The question is whether you want to." Jack thought about the last few weeks. The unexpected rescue, the slow exchange of texts, the hospital visit, the road trip. How Emily had fit naturally into their life, how Lily had blossomed with their presence, how Claire had stood like a warrior in that conference room defending his family. "I want to," he admitted, "but I'm terrified. The last time I let someone in completely—" "You lost her," Claire finished, "and it broke you. But Jack, you're already broken. We both are. The question is whether we want to be broken alone or together." "Together sounds better," Jack said softly. "Yeah? Yeah." She kissed him then, soft and certain, tasting like hope and second chances. When they pulled apart, both girls were watching from the window, grinning. "Finally," Emily called out. "Lily owes me $5. "You were betting on us?" Claire asked, mock-offended. "It was obvious," Lily said. "Dad's been making hard eyes at you since the landslide." I don't make hard eyes." "You totally do," all three females said in unison, and Jack laughed, really laughed, feeling something shift and settle in his chest. This was it, he realized. This was what Oliver had talked about, living a life that mattered, that helped others, that chose love over fear. It had taken 8 years and 21 families and a woman trapped in a landslide, but he'd finally found his way back to something like wholeness. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and messy and absolutely worth saving. "So," Emily said, bouncing on her toes, "when do we move to Montana?" "Emily," Claire protested. "What? The schools here have way better science programs than San Francisco. There's actual nature. Lily and I could work on projects together." "She has a point," Lily added. "Plus, I need someone who understands my references to molecular biology." Jack and Claire exchanged glances, a whole conversation in a look. "We'll figure it out," Claire said finally. "Together. Together." The word hung in the air like a promise, like a bridge rebuilt after a collapse, stronger for having been broken. As they all went inside, Emily and Lily already planning how to reorganize the cabin to fit everyone, Jack caught sight of the photo on Emily's phone again. All those faces, all those lives, all those futures made possible by one terrible, beautiful choice. He thought about Sarah, about the baby they'd lost, about the life that might have been. The grief would never fully leave. It was carved into him now, part of his structure, like the grain in wood. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the scars were what made the surviving parts stronger. "You okay?" Claire asked, taking his hand. "Yeah," Jack said, meaning it for the first time in 8 years. "I'm okay." They stood there for a moment, hands linked, listening to their daughters plan their shared future with the confidence of people who'd never learned that some things were impossible. And maybe that was the real gift. Not just the lives saved or the families found, but the possibility of believing once again that tomorrow could be better than yesterday, that love could grow in ground that had been salted with tears. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. But in the warm light of the cabin, 4 people who'd found each other through disaster and grace were writing a new story, one careful word at a time.